I played games on No Games Day. I needed to put this somewhere online, for nobody I've ever spoken to about that day seems to recall a single event. And I assure you, reader, that all of this happened without a doubt in my mind. But everyone doubts me. So if even one person can relate to anything I'm about to write about that day, I beg of you to say something. It'll calm my scattered mind. The day was February 29th, 2020, and besides the date and the spreading threat of the coronavirus, you'd assume it to be a regular day. The sun shone bright across the gray winter sky, birds were singing, and the wind rushed steadily between trees. I was making my way through a local trail, roughly 30 minutes away from home. It cut through woods and large open fields, making for a decently long walk before looping back to my car. I encountered but a single oddity whilst traversing through the forest. It was after the path split, leading to a rickety old bridge. Built to safely cross a rushing stream, the bridge lived exactly to expectation and almost fell apart. That was not the weird part. Within the path of the stream rested a large, disc-shaped hunk of metal. It reflected light as would a mirror, and I could see my face within. After crossing the bridge, I figured that it was only reasonable to try and get a closer look, but that was about all. It didn't seem damaged in any way, and so I figured the object was left behind by somebody else. Or perhaps it had to be there for an important reason. Either way, I really didn't think much of it. The air was fresh and cool, and the forest's scent was pleasant. I continued my walk and passed an open field with a great view of the Atlantic, crossing through a section of thick greenery until reaching for my keys, unlocking the car door. It was quiet, and the hum of the engine was singularly masking said silence. The drive was long due to traffic. An accident had occurred on the highway. Again, I thought nothing of it, figured it was just bad luck, that's all. And so I continued on, pressing upon the accelerator, then upon the brakes, a never-ending cycle, until I finally passed the bottleneck. I drove a little under the speed limit and made it home. Taking off my coat, I placed it upon the back of a chair. My place is comfy, and I don't usually have company over, and the neighbors in the next-door apartments are usually pretty quiet. The area is fairly rural, too, making it convenient to walk anywhere important. After cleaning up a bit, the sun started to set, and the sky grew into a dark, calming red. And after stepping outside and watching it cross the horizon, I thought about much of the past and of the many intricacies of everyday life. Enthralled completely in thought, I eventually stepped back inside, meandering my way over to the couch. Of course, I would choose to play games for the rest of the night, as there is not a better way to pass the time. It was around 8:30 when the building started to shake, and a glow flashed outside the blinds, casting light rays through suspended dust. Soon it stopped, but I was shocked and paused everything I was doing and stepped outside to investigate. Everything seemed natural. I know I hadn't imagined it. Pacing up and down the street, a single street lamp was lit, shining through a layer of fog. The wind howled. It was 9:30 when I dragged myself back inside. In itself, that was hard for me to do. The world felt as though it was rotating around me. It was impossible to concentrate. Then static echoed from the television, and snow covered the screen. Over time it grew louder. My ears bled. In a flash of bright red, I was somewhere else entirely. Patterns covered the steel surroundings, emitting crimson light. My arms were being held, and as much as I tried, I couldn't scream. A sticky substance was soaked into my clothing. They towered above, speaking in their own dialect. Their appearance, for which I cannot describe, was horrid and near incomprehensible. Soon they spoke English, in a scratchy, deep voice. "Calm down. We need to know why you interact with such devices. Think about the answer. We can read your thoughts." It hadn't crossed my mind what those things could be referring to. They held me tighter, shining lights into my eyes, in all sorts of colors. "Why? Tell us. We need to know to further understand." Then it clicked. "I play them to pass the time, as some sort of distraction," I thought. There was a long pause. "Very well," echoed the voice. "That's all we need to know. And there's others we need to ask the same." Pain surged through my veins. I saw many glimpses and hues indescribable to man. There were places seen that may or may not be real. The screeching was deafening. There was one last thing I heard through the ringing. Useless! Useless! Such an unproductive activity. How could they experience joy from such a thing? The voice trailed off and continued in another dialect. Everything went black. For a while, my senses ceased to function. Everything was void. Then I saw stars and a collection of color and beauty. The nebulas erupted with vibrancy, and for a bit, all was calm. I can only imagine the things they did to me whilst I was asleep. I've never felt the same ever since. When I woke, I assumed it all to be a dream, because surely such bizarreness is only possible within a dreamscape. I opened my eyes. The sun creeped through the windows. All was silent besides the chirping birds. I felt oddly energized, yet I ceased to move. I didn't know what to think, but when I finally decided to regain myself, I noticed a horrid scent and sat up. It was me who reeked of vile, and my clothes felt awfully stiff. No matter what I say, no soul I expressed to has believed a word. So am I insane? Somebody out there has to be able to recall something similar. Somebody, please reach out. As I wrote before, it would greatly ease my thoughts, and I shall live with ease discomfort regarding that day, just to know that I hadn't been alone. Thanks, reader, truly thank you, and spread the word. The stranger in the field. There's a field near my house I've walked through nearly every day for years. It's not remarkable, just an open stretch of grass surrounded by a thin line of trees. It connects the edge of town to a nearby hiking trail, and it's always been quiet, peaceful, until last week. It started with a glimpse of something unusual. As I was walking home from the trail at dusk, I noticed a figure standing near the center of the field. They were far away, just a dark outline against the fading light. I thought it was strange. No one ever hangs out in the field, especially at that time of day. Most people stick to the paths or the main road. The figure didn't move, and after a moment, I convinced myself it was just a farmer or someone passing through. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Their posture was stiff, unnatural, like they were frozen in place. The next day, I walked the same route. The figure was still there, standing in the exact same spot, facing the same direction. This time, the sun was higher, and I could make out a bit more detail. They were wearing a long, dark coat, even though the weather was mild. Their face was turned away from me, looking toward the trees. "Hey!" I called out, more to see if they'd react than anything else. My voice carried across the empty field, but the figure didn't flinch. They just stood there, eerily still. I watched them for a minute, then continued walking, my pace a little quicker than usual. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Who stands in the middle of a field for hours without moving? I joked to myself that they might be a scarecrow, but the thought didn't comfort me. The next day, I decided to check it out. I'm not normally one to investigate creepy things, but curiosity got the better of me. I headed into the field, walking directly toward the spot where the figure had been standing. But when I got there was no one, just grass, bending gently in the breeze. I looked around, scanning the area, but it was empty. There weren't even any footprints in the soft dirt, nothing to suggest anyone had been standing there. I told myself it was just my imagination, or maybe someone playing a prank, but as I turned to leave, I noticed something strange. The grass where the figure had been standing was darker, almost black, and seemed flattened in a perfect circle, like it had been burned. That night, I dreamed of the field. In the dream, I was standing where the figure had been, staring at the distant line of trees. Everything was silent, too silent. Then slowly, the trees began to move, their branches twisting unnaturally, as though they were reaching for me. I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding. The next morning, I told myself I wouldn't walk through the field again. I'd take the longer route home, stick to the main road. But as the day went on, a strange compulsion pulled me back. It was like the field was calling me, demanding my attention. When I reached the field, the figure was there again. This time, they were closer to the edge of the trees, almost hidden in the shadows. I hesitated, debating whether to keep walking or turn back. But something about them felt different. They were moving now, just slightly, their head tilted as though they were watching me. A chill ran down my spine. I stepped backward, ready to leave. But then, they raised their hand, slowly, deliberately, and pointed toward the trees. I don't know why, but I followed the direction they pointed. It was as though my body moved on its own, ignoring every instinct screaming at me to run. The trees were dense, the shadows deepening as I stepped into the forest. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth. I didn't see the figure anymore, but I felt them. I felt their presence, watching me, guiding me deeper into the woods. Then, after what felt like hours, I saw it. There was a clearing ahead, and in the center of it, a small wooden structure, a shed, or maybe an old hunting blind. It looked ancient, the wood warped and blackened with age. The door was slightly ajar, revealing nothing but darkness inside. I stopped, every muscle in my body screaming at me to turn back. But before I could move, I heard it, a voice. It was faint, almost a whisper coming from the shed. "Help me!" It sounded like a child, their voice trembling and weak. My heart raced. Every logical part of me knew I shouldn't go any closer, but I couldn't just leave. What if someone was trapped in there? I approached slowly, my hands trembling as I pushed the door open. The inside was pitch black, the air cold and damp. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaking. Is someone in there? The voice came again, clearer this time. Please, help me. I stepped inside, squinting to see in the darkness. The shed was empty, just a dirt floor and rotting wooden walls, but the voice kept calling, growing louder, echoing around me. Then, the door slammed shut. I spun around, heart pounding, but the door wouldn't budge. I pushed and pulled, panic setting in, but it was as though the wood had fused together. That's when I realized the voice had stopped. The shed was silent. No, not silent. I could hear something, a faint sound like breathing, slow, deep breaths coming from behind me. I didn't turn around. I couldn't, but I felt it. Something was there, standing just inches away, its breath hot against the back of my neck. It didn't say anything. It just stood there, waiting. I don't know how long I stood frozen in that shed, but eventually, the door creaked open on its own. The field was just outside, bathed in moonlight, as if nothing had happened. I ran. I didn't look back, not even once. I haven't gone near the field since, but I see it from my window every night. And now, whenever I look out, the figure is there, standing in the center of the grass, facing my house, watching me, waiting. Well, that was pretty much it. I hope you liked the story till then. Bye-bye.